Hello guys, hope you're doing well. In the previous videos, we talked about the formulas for alpha plus beta and double alpha. Now that we've learned these formulas, we want to derive more formulas from them that are very useful in solving problems. So let's go. We know that tangent alpha plus beta is equal tangent alpha plus tangent beta divided by 1 minus tangent alpha times tangent beta. And also tangent of alpha minus beta is equal tangent alpha minus tangent beta divided by 1 plus tangent alpha times tangent beta. And we know that tangent pi over 4 is equal 1. We learned these formulas in the previous video. So tangent pi over 4 plus alpha. According to this formula, if we consider this part as pi over 4 and beta is equal alpha, we have tangent pi over 4 plus alpha is equal tangent alpha. Alpha is pi over 4. Tangent pi over 4 is equal 1. 1 plus tangent beta. Alpha is equal beta. Plus tangent alpha. Tangent alpha divided by 1 minus tangent alpha. Alpha is pi over 4. It means tangent alpha is equal tangent pi over 4 is equal 1 times tangent beta. It means tangent alpha. So tangent pi over 4 plus alpha is equal 1 plus tangent alpha divided by 1 minus tangent alpha. And we can say tangent of pi over 4 minus alpha is equal, if we consider this part as alpha and alpha is equal beta, we have 1 minus tangent alpha divided by 1 plus tangent alpha, because tangent pi over 4 is equal 1. So tangent pi over 4 minus alpha is equal tangent pi over 4 minus tangent alpha divided by 1 plus tangent pi over 4, it means 1 times tangent alpha. Okay? So number 3, sine alpha plus cosine alpha all squared is equal. So do you remember this formula? A plus B all squared is equal A squared plus B squared plus 2AB, and A minus B all squared is equal A squared plus B squared minus 2AB. So according to this formula, if we consider this part as A and this part as B, so sine is equal A and cosine is equal B. So according to this formula, we have sine squared alpha plus B squared cosine squared alpha plus 2AB sine alpha times cosine alpha, and is equal sine squared alpha plus cosine squared alpha is equal 1 plus 2 sine alpha times cosine alpha is equal sine 2 alpha. Okay, so sine alpha plus cosine alpha all squared is equal 1 plus sine 2 alpha. And also sine alpha minus cosine alpha all squared is equal. According to this formula, if we consider this part as A and this part as B, we have A squared, it means sine squared alpha plus cosine squared alpha minus 2AB minus 2 sine alpha times cosine alpha is equal sine squared alpha plus cosine squared alpha is equal 1 minus 2 sine alpha times cosine alpha is equal sine 2 alpha. So sine alpha minus cosine alpha all squared is equal 1 minus sine 2 alpha. So this formula and this formula are very useful. Number 3 and number 4. Number 5. Sine 2 alpha is equal to tangent alpha divided by 1 plus tangent squared alpha. But how and why? We want to prove that. 2 tangent alpha divided by 1 plus tangent squared alpha is equal. We first expand the tangent in the formula above. So we know that tangent alpha is equal sine alpha divided by cosine alpha. So we have 2 sine alpha divided by cosine alpha divided by 1 plus sine squared alpha divided by cosine squared alpha. 2 sine alpha divided by cosine alpha divided by cosine squared alpha, and in the numerator we can write cosine squared alpha plus sine squared alpha. Cosine squared alpha plus sine squared alpha. Okay? And 2 sine alpha divided by cosine alpha divided by sine squared alpha plus cosine squared alpha is equal 1 divided by cosine squared alpha. And if I multiply far by far and near by near, we have 2 sine alpha times cosine squared alpha divided by cosine alpha times 1 is equal cosine alpha. Cosine 2 alpha is equal cosine alpha times cosine alpha. So cosine alpha, they cancel out and we have 2 sine alpha times cosine alpha, and 2 sine alpha times cosine alpha is equal sine 2 alpha, and we have sine 2 alpha is equal to tangent alpha divided by 1 tangent squared alpha. And number 6, cosine 2 alpha is equal 1 minus tangent squared alpha divided by 1 plus tangent squared alpha. But why and how? Because 1 minus tangent squared alpha divided by 1 plus tangent squared alpha is equal. We expand the tangent in this formula. We have 1 minus Tangent squared alpha is equal sine squared alpha divided by cosine squared alpha divided by 1 plus sine squared alpha divided by cosine squared alpha, and is equal. So in this fraction, if we factor out the common denominator from both the numerator and the denominator, we have cosine squared alpha minus sine squared alpha divided by cosine squared alpha divided by cosine squared alpha plus sine squared alpha divided by cosine squared alpha. And if we multiply far by far and near by near, we have cosine squared alpha times cosine squared alpha minus sine squared alpha is equal cosine 2 alpha divided by cosine squared alpha times 1. We have cosine squared alpha. Cosine squared alpha and cosine squared alpha, they cancel out, and we have cosine 2 alpha. Cosine 2 alpha. And these two formula are very, very important and very useful. Number 7. Cotangent alpha minus tangent alpha is equal. We know that cotangent alpha is equal cosine alpha divided by sine alpha minus tangent alpha is equal sine alpha divided by cosine alpha. And if we factor out the common denominator, we have sine alpha times cosine alpha, and in the numerator we have cosine alpha times cosine alpha is equal cosine squared alpha minus sine alpha times sine alpha, sine squared alpha. And we know that cosine squared alpha minus sine squared alpha is equal cosine 2 alpha divided by sine alpha times cosine alpha is equal 1/2 sine 2 alpha is equal 1 divided by 1/2 is equal 2, and cosine 2 alpha divided by sine 2 alpha is equal cotangent 2 alpha. So cotangent alpha minus tangent alpha is equal to cotangent 2 alpha. Number 8. Cotangent alpha plus tangent alpha is equal. We know that cotangent alpha is equal cosine alpha divided by sine alpha plus sine alpha divided by cosine alpha is equal tangent alpha. And if we factor out the common denominator, we have sine alpha times cosine alpha, and in the numerator we have cosine squared alpha plus sine squared alpha. Cosine squared alpha plus sine squared alpha is equal 1 divided by sine alpha times cosine alpha is equal 1/2 sine 2 alpha. So 1 divided by 1/2 is equal 2 divided by sine 2 alpha. So cotangent alpha plus tangent alpha is equal 2 divided by sine 2 alpha. And these two formula are very useful.